صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. آئے میرے عباس، آئے میرے عباس، جب ردا سر سے چینی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نایا غازی. جب ردا سر سے چینی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نایا غازی. آل عمران کہاں اور زندان کہاں، اے بہن قید ہوئی، تو نایا غازی. جب ردا سر سے چینی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نایا غازی. ہم کو پانی نہ ملے تیری خوشبو تو رہے، تیرے بازو نہ کٹے چاہے مشکی زچی دے، یہ مگر ہو نہ سکا تیرے بازو ہے جدا. مجھ پہ ہے تشنہ لبی، تو نایا غازی. جب ردا سر سے چینی میں صدا دیتی رہی، تو نایا غازی. دھوپ میں تو تھا شجر، تجھ سے آباد تگر، ہے برہنا میرا سر، کیا نہیں تجھ کو خبر. اے علمدار وفا، اس بہن کو بخدا تجھ سے دارستی بھری، تو نایا غازی جبریدہ سر سے چینی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نایا غازی آ گئی شام علم لٹ گئے اہل حرم ریت پر جلتی ہوئی ہو گیا ٹھنڈا عالم پرسہ دینے کے لیے مجھ سے ملنے کے لیے آ گئے بابا علی تو نایا غازی جبریدہ سر سے چینی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نایا غازی کیا کہوں شعر میرے بیریدہ ہم کو لیے یہ مسلمان سارے شہر در شہر گئے خلقت کوفہ کبھی خلقت شام کبھی اور ہاں ہم پہ ہنسی تو نایا غازی جبریدہ سر سے چینی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نایا غازی کتنی بے بس تھی بہن اے شہنشاہ وفا نام لے لے کے میرا جب یہ ظالم نے کہا ناز تھا جس پہ تجھے اب بلاؤ نہ اسے اور میں روتی رہی تو نایا غازی جبریدہ سر سے چینی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نایا غازی قید خانے میں قضا جب سکینہ کو ملی دیکھے کرتے کا کفن بچی دفنائی گئی اس گھری نام تیرا صورت ناد علی دکھ میں دوراتی رہی تو نایا غازی جبریدہ سر سے چینی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نایا غازی آل عمران کہاں اور زندان کہاں یہ بہن قید ہوئی تو نایا غازی جبریدہ سر سے چینی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نایا غازی محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
الصلوات. نعرے تکبیر، نعرے رسالت، نعرے حیدری. رجو غمو آفت میں گرفتار ہے زینب، رجو غمو آفت میں گرفتار ہے زینب. واللہ بتر کی ازادار ہے زینب، واللہ بتر کی ازادار ہے زینب. وہ اجڑی ہوئی رات کے سنیٹے میں پیرا، وہ اجڑی ہوئی رات کے سنیٹے میں پیرا. محسوس یہ ہوتا ہے علمدار ہے زینب. صلوات.
صلوات. بے کس کہوں غریب کہوں، بے کس کہوں غریب کہوں، بے نوا کہوں، بے کس کہوں غریب کہوں، کعبہ کہوں جناب کہوں، کعبہ کہوں جناب کہوں، اور کیا کہوں، کعبہ کہوں جناب کہوں، اور کیا کہوں، مریم کہوں بطول کہوں، مریم کہوں بطول کہوں، ہاجرہ کہوں، مریم کہوں بطول کہوں، ہاجرہ کہوں، زینب کی رائے صبر میں بتلاؤں کیا کہوں، زینب کو رائے صبر میں بتلاؤں کیا کہوں، بے کس کہوں غریب کہوں، بے نوا کہوں، Salwa.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات صل على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'minin, this is a treasury announcement. Arba'in Niyaz Fund and the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Niyaz Fund is ongoing. Please be kind enough to donate your generous donations to our Jamaat's Treasurer Sahib. Mu'minin, there will be Fajr Jamaat Namaz on Saturday morning and Sunday morning at 5:45 p.m. The namaz will be led by Al-Haj Raza Hussain Bhai Rahim. Ruhani Majlis announcements. Today's Majlis has been sponsored by Shabir Bhai Sadak and family for the Isale Sawab of Maruma Masuma Bhai Wajid Ali Sadak, Marum Onali Bhai Damji, Marum Afsal Bhai Velji, Marumins of Sadak family, Marumins of Velji family, Marumins of Damji family, Marumins of Datu family, and Kul Marumins. You are all humbly requested to recite Surah Fatiha for all the Marumins. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. فاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا مولانا حبيب الله العالمين أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، ولعنة الله على القوم الظالمين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعل الله الآخر الأحد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين يا رحمة الله الواسعة، يا باب نجاة الأمة، يا عبرة لكل مؤمن ومؤمنات، غريب مظلوم كربلاء فيا ليتني كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، أعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم. Something which either we realized at some point in our lives or we were reminded of in yesterday's discussion is that in a world of people asking questions of where am I going and what is my purpose, how do I live a good life, in a world of that uncertainty, one, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, stands and says, ask me. Saluni, I will answer for you. Saluni qabla an tafqiduni. Ask me before you lose me. I know the answers to these questions. And maybe at some point along the road I forgot this and I went somewhere else when I had a problem. But the door to Ali was always there to me. So when this question comes about, well, I wasn't there on the day of Ashura and I'm not there at Karbala, but I still want to know what my role is. What is my role in all of this movement of Husain alayhi salam? Indeed, our Imam Ali alayhi salam is helpful in answering even that question. This is why our scholars say that, don't think that Ashura is a battle which does not include you. Ask yourself instead that if the battlefield has been enlarged, at what point do I stand on that battlefield? I'm not there on the day of Ashura, but that battle continues. That war, that struggle has not ended. So at what point on that battlefield am I standing right now? I'm standing in a different time, in a different place, but I'm still standing. What do I do now in order to fight the way that is expected of me is a question of letter 52 of Nahj al-Balagha, the letter to Malik al-Ashtar, where the Imam alayhi salam, in speaking to Malik, we'll discuss yesterday, sends him to Egypt with a very express role to establish justice in this land, the justice of Ali alayhi salam. And the question then comes, what is the adl of Ali? What is Imam Ali alayhi salam's justice? How does he define this theme, this word? What does it mean to him? And if, for those of you who are reading along the letter in your own time, if we keep reading, you'll find that Imam Ali alayhi salam discusses what is justice in his eyes, how does it look, and how must one act in order to establish justice in their own capacity. So inshallah today, as we keep reading sections of this letter, 52 or 53 in some versions, for those of you who are reading along, ask yourself, how does Imam Ali alayhi salam define adl, define justice? And in doing so, how do I then realize my role in establishing justice in my life, whether it's in my family or my friends or my community or my workplace or any level of social interaction, or more than this, any type of behavior, there is adl to be relevant in that situation. How? This all goes back to how does Ali define justice? Inshallah, that's our discussion. If you are with me, inshallah, to begin our discussion, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Since the theme is so relevant to the Imam of our time, also one more salat to mention, Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, inshallah. So where we got so far in this letter is this. Imam said, Malik, I'm sending you to this land. It's Egypt. There's been rulers before who are not inclined towards me. And the people are not sure what kind of leader you're going to be. So your role now in going to this new land is to speak for me. And if you help me, you're helping Allah. And if you help Allah, Allah will now help you in doing the task you've been given. What's that task? We keep reading. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Imam Ali says to him, وَلَا تَنْسِبَنَّ نَفْسَكَ لِحَرْبِ اللَّهِ. Don't set yourself, Malik, to go to war with God, to go to harb with Allah. Don't do this. Why? فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَدَيْ لَكَ بِنِقْمَتِهِ. If you do this, you'll have no power against His power. وَلَا غِنَى بِكَ عَنْ عَفْوِ وَرَحْمَتِهِ. And you cannot compare or live without His mercy and His forgiveness, His afu and His rahm. Don't act hastily when the time for anger comes towards you. When the time for mercy comes, be merciful. When the time of punishment comes, punish. But be firm with this. Okay, let's stop just for a quick second. Imam said, Malik, don't go to war with Allah. Don't challenge him. Meaning, when you're ruling, rule for the sake of God. Don't give any judgment, any hukum which is against Allah Azza wa Jal. Make sure that when you speak, you're speaking for this deen, because you've been sent by Allah to run this land. Someone might say, okay, but then he speaks about, when you're angry, don't give a ruling. And when you're being merciful, be merciful. When you're being punishment, be punishing. Why? Well, it goes back to what we said yesterday. He says, Malik, when you rule, you're going to face shahawat of your nafs. You're going to feel it. You're going to feel that desire whenever you're in power over someone. Now, when you're in that situation, Ya Malik, help Allah, He'll help you. But still, when the time comes to speak, don't speak of your own desires. Speak for the sake of God. Something which happens in general to those in power is they have takabbur. They get pride. That I am in charge, I have power, I have money, I have rulership, people respect me. And they speak in such a way as if it's them and they are the ones who are giving a hukum, a judgment, not Allah through them. This idea is in fact going to war with God. Because I'm placing my pride between the people and Allah. And our scholars say that the moment you look at someone to think of them as down from you, you've forgotten who's above you. When I say someone's below me, and I make that hierarchy between me and them, what about Allah Azza wa Jal? Isn't Allah above them? Isn't Allah above you? Where did you forget this? So to be oppressive vertical down is to be neglectful vertical up. This is obviously the issue we have of Iblis. Iblis, when he's told, فَخَوْلُهُ سَاجِدِينَ, everyone do worship now to Adam, he says, why? Why do I have to worship him? I'm made of fire. He's made of earth. Fire is of a greater value than earth. I'm not doing it. This takabbur is a form of harb ilallah. This thing Imam is describing, going to war with God. Because God has said one thing and the insan, or in this case the jinn, has said another thing, of my own opinion. If we take this issue further, the takabbur is very closely linked to the concept of makhila. Makhila does mean pride. When a person is proud. Not just they're arrogant, they have pride in them. That for some reason I love me. And I want to speak on behalf of myself. When Allah has a hukum in this example, makhila comes from khayal. Khayal يعني imagination. Meaning, anytime someone is proud or has takabbur or makhila, what they're doing is an act of imagination. They've imagined they are worth something to speak on their own authority. They've imagined they exist, but in truth, only Allah is haquq, is really existing. So where did I come from to compete with God? Where was that me? How does it even exist? It's all khayal. I myself am completely dependent on God in my wujud. I'm fully muhtaj on my cause. I could not cause myself if I wanted. I have no power. So now I'm going to give a judgment which goes against God. I'm going to speak against God. It makes no sense. This is khayal. This is makhila. And the makhila is linked to takabbur. Imam is saying, Malik, people are going to come to you and ask you for advice and to give rulings. Don't speak of your own opinion. Whenever you have a ra'iyah, those who are listening to you, speak the word of God only. Okay, then he keeps reading. Read the salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The next statement requires a foundation in psychology, which I'll briefly summarize, of what Imam says to Malik. People learn in different ways. Some people are visual learners. For them, maybe you find yourself equating yourself with this. You need to look at something to understand something, whether it's a picture or a face, you never forget a face, or you see something. And because you've seen it, your eyes remember that thing much more. Okay, that's some people are like this. Others are auditory learners. For them, when you listen to something, it stays in your mind. Maybe you hear a podcast or a lecture or someone speaking. If someone says it to you, when you hear it, for some reason, that's what gets you and you remember it. Others are kinesthetic learners. For them, when you touch something, that helps you remember or know that gain of piece of knowledge. They go to a museum, they want to touch all the artifacts. When someone shows something to you, you want to hold this book, you want to feel it. And in feeling it, it helps you. Some people are copy learners. For you, when you need to learn something, seeing someone else do it helps you a lot. Then once you have an example to copy, now I know how to do that thing. We all have different types. One type of a learner is an authority learner. This means if someone in a position of authority says something, I'm much more inclined to listen to them. Anyone can say the same thing, but if they're in power, or they're an authority, or they're maybe my parents, or my family, or my elders, or an alim, or a scholar, or a leader in the community, or maybe even an imam or a prophet, if they say it, I'm more likely to accept this fact. Even though the imam says, look at what is being said, not who is saying it. Some people are like this. They need to be told in a certain way. Imam wants to address Malik to not do this when you're giving judgment. He says, Malik, وَلَا تَقُولُوا, don't say to the people, لَا تَقُولَنَّ إِنِّي مُعَرٌ, I'm in power. آمَرُهُ فَأَطَاعُ. Don't say to the people, I'm in power, and so listen to me and obey me. Don't use that in a way to convince people to do things. Why? He says, فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ, if you do this, إِدْغَالٌ فِي قَلْبِ, you'll confuse their hearts. وَمَنْ حَكَتِ الدِّينِ, you'll misguide them from their faith. وَتَقَرَّبُوا مِنَ الْغَيْرَ, and you'll take them closer and closer towards leaving this faith. When you speak, they should judge you by your words, not the fact that it's a leader saying it. Because look, just recently, not long before this, Amr ibn As was in charge. And people are used to hearing a certain type of knowledge or certain type of information from the minbar, from the authority. And they accepted it because, look, a Khalifa is saying it, or the Khalifa's rep is saying it, I might as well follow. I'm saying, Malik, you're not like this. For you, you don't get to say, Ana ama amiratu alaykum, I'm your amir, so listen to me. Don't say that. You should be judged on your words, and that should be enough for you. And then he goes on and says to him, that when you're in authority over the people, if you do feel pride, even for a second, and you think that people should listen to me because I'm in charge and I'm in power, remember something, Allah's above you. All of the power you think you have, is it anything compared to Allah's power? No, of course it's not. It's nowhere near His power. So whenever even that inkling comes that I'm above someone, remember, if you think you're above them, how much greater above you is Allah Azza wa Jal. That thought itself, Ya Malik, should bring you back down to your wisdom, which had left you just for a moment. So this is the theme so far. The theme so far of this section is Allah Azza wa Jal is Malik. Allah's power is the most greatest thing in this context. And if you're going to speak, only speak about what Allah has commanded you to speak. Now we come to what adl actually means. The Imam then says to him, Ya Malik. For example, he says to him, Insaf Allah wa insaf an-nas. Do justice to Allah and then do justice to the people. وَلِنَفْسِهِ, and then to yourselves. وَمِن نَفْسِهِ وَمِن خَاصَةِ الْأَحْلِكَ, and then to your close family. وَفِيهِ مَنْ هُوَ فِي رَعِيَّتِكَ, and whoever is considered under your authority, they come after. إِنَّكَ إِلَّا تَعْقُلُوا تَظْلُمُونَ. If you don't do this, you'll be considered one of those who do dhulm. You're a dhalim. What's his statement? Insaf Allah wa insaf an-nas. Number one, do justice to God, and then do justice to the people. Yesterday, we were discussing how, so many philosophers and thinkers have different definitions of justice. Okay, Plato's got one, Socrates got another one, Aristotle has one, Rawls has another. What's Imam Ali's definition of justice? It's this. Number one, you do your rights, you do your huquq by Allah Azza wa Jal. Once you've done that, now you're able to do justice by the people. You start with Allah. Yani in Islam, the true definition of adl is to treat everything according to its appropriate maqam based on how Allah wants you to act with them. Giving everything its proper place. This person's huquq are determined by Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay, give them this right. This house has these huquq, give it this right. Your neighbor has certain huquq, give it this right. Giving everything an action according to its suitable position. This is adl, true adl. Not me and my role. All of existence is included in this example. Adl is treating everything according to its proper place. Read a salawat, please. But it begins with Allah Azza wa Jal. Insaf Allah. First do right by God. That's the first thing. And then, when you have done your huquq to Allah, wa insaf an-nas, wa min an-nafsihi, wa min ahliku, wa min ra'iyatik. And then to everyone else, your family, your friends, yourself. But first do right by God. Why? Huquq, rights, comes from the word haq. Haq or al-haq is the name of God. Many times the falsafa, the ulama of philosophy, and the urafa, and the ulama in kalam, the ulama in theology, will refer to Allah just as haq. They won't say God, they'll say haq. This is how you prove the existence of haq. Haq said this. Why? Because Allah is the only existing reality. Imam Ali says, number one, do your huquq to Allah, do insaf to Allah. What is the right that you have to God? Well, it's to worship Him. It's ubudiyya. It's to prostrate to Him. It's to accept His tawheed. Or for example, lita'arafu, to know Him. I have certain rights to God. Once I've done this, I will notice something. Allah Azza wa Jal has ordained huquq for every single living thing. So by saying insaf Allah, wa insaf an-nas, what I'm doing is linking all of creation with the order of Allah. George Jordak, the famous Christian Lebanese thinker who read Nahj Balagha and fell in love with Ali ibn Talib, has a very beautiful point on this point. He says, when Ali says, insaf Allah, wa insaf an-nas, do right by God and then by the people, he has linked himself with the entire cosmos of creation. How? He says, in the universe, the blades of grass have their own huquq in the way that they sway. And the stem of the flowers have their own huquq, their own rights, the right to grow in a certain way and face the sun as it blossoms. The waves have certain huquq, and Imam Ali says the way that they climb over one another when the tide comes. The sun has its own huquq to shine and to cause goodness on this earth. The earth has huquq back to the sun, that whatever comes from the sun back to the earth in the form of color, it returns it in the different diversity of colors of the different flowers on this earth. And the moon has its huquq to control the tide. When, Jordak says, when Imam Ali says justice comes from Allah and then the people, he's linking all of us in creation, just like the flowers and the trees and the plants and the sun and the moon. Even me and you have huquq. We are part of this system. And if God has a way He wants us to treat all of reality and He's created it, He's created you with certain rights as well. Go to Risalatul Huquq of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, see what your huquq are, and of your neighbor, and of your far and close neighbor, and your mother, and your father, and your body part. Every single thing has its huquq. The definition of Islam, of adl, which is what? Treating everything according to its proper place. This is the only definition which includes all of creation in this definition and puts you as part of that creation. Just like the heavens have the huquq, the earth has its huquq, I have and you have our own huquq. We salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This definition is much more expansive and wider than any philosopher or thinker before or after Ali alayhi salam. Their way of defining justice based on me and you and the people, not based on reality. Let me give you one example about this. Ask yourself this question: which of these two is greater? To be a just person or to be a generous person? What's better? Justice, adl, or jood, generosity? Which of these is better? You can think about it yourself. Maybe in your mind, keep your answer in your mind, your provisional answer, because I'm obviously going to give the answer. Think what it might be. What's better, adl or jood? Someone comes to Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And they say, Ya Imam, which is greater, adl or jood? Having justice or generosity? Imam says, look, adl is treating everything according to its own maqam, its own place. That's adl. Generosity is when you decide to take something outside of its maqam to help someone, to be good to someone. Generosity may be giving someone their rights, more than their rights, giving them extra money if they're only owed a certain amount. That's generosity. He said, Imam al-Islam says, look, adl is everything according to maqam. He says all of this creation exists according to adl. All of it. Everything has its own maqam. Jood is for certain specific khas situations. I prefer the universal system over anything. That everything has its own adl. I prefer this to those small instances which you give to someone more. I prefer for everyone to get their own huquq. So for me, Ali says adl is greater. Why? Because it's not just me and you anymore. Adl for Ali is so much wider. It's all of reality. I hope when you were thinking, all of you chose adl in your minds. If not, now you know. Ali's answer is adl. It's the greatest thing. Okay, let's go one step deeper. In Sermon 214 of Nahj Balagha, Imam alayhi salam says, وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّهُ عَدْلٌ عَدْلًا. I bear witness Allah is adl, and He does adl. So now, adl is not just about me and you. It's not about the heavens and the earth only. Allah Himself is adl. He is justice. That's Him. Sometimes, very rarely, Ahlul Bayt speak like this. For example, there's a hadith that Inna Allah Ta'ala Jamilun Yuhibbul Jamal. Allah is beauty. and He loves beauty. We don't have time to go into this. I could give a whole majlis on this one phrase. It's beautiful, ironically. Allah is Jamil. He is beauty. And He loves beauty. Same thing here. Allah's not just He does justice. He is Adl. That is what He is. His entire being is according to His own huquq, His own rights. All of Him is Adl. And He does Adl. Okay, we need to expand this a little bit more. When the Holy Prophet says Allah created the earth, he says Allah created the earth with Adl. He gave every single thing its proportion. Whether it was the heavens or the earth, everything was existing according to this measure. All things come from Adl. Okay, so now when me and you are told Insaf Allah wa Insaf al-Nas, all I'm doing is recognizing Allah Azza wa Jal. Me being good to you is just recognizing Allah as one. Me being kind to you, me being helpful to you, or you respecting the rights of your neighbor or of your parents is just recognizing there's one Allah over you. Inside the adl of a person is Allah Himself is adl. This is how He is. His mahiyya, His nature is of adl. His creation only reflects and mirrors this reality back to Him. So when me and you are doing right by each other, all we're doing is tasdeeq of Allah's tawheed. We're just recognizing Allah is one. His being is great. He is the one who establishes justice, and all I'm doing is aligning back to Him. I'm just going back to my fitrah in truth. I'm going back to my nature. Reading this letter is in truth reminding us something we always knew. فَإِذَا سَوَيْتَهُ, Quran says, and we shaped, we proportioned you. Every proportion you have is based on a precise measure by Allah. Me being good to you is just recognizing Allah made you and Allah made me. It always points back to God. So the Islamic idea of justice is much wider than this. It's about all reality. Okay, let's go one step deeper. Often you know something by its opposite. Okay, follow me for this thought, inshallah. You know something by its opposite. I know the concept of one because I've seen many. So if I've seen many people, I know the idea of one person. It's just that same thing, but only one. I know light because I know darkness. And I can compare them together. And by knowing one thing, I understand the opposite. In our faith, we, the followers of haqq, the followers of truth, are very sensitive to dhulm. Wherever we see dhulm, we have to call it out. Whether it's a child or an adult, if something's wrong, it's wrong. And we believe something called husn qub aqli, we should know rationally, that's right and that's wrong. We see it. Why? Because we follow an imam who himself is haqq. Ali is haqq. So if he's my imam and he spends his whole life calling out dhulm, when I see dhulm now, I can't help but call it out. It's in my nature now. I've become one who is a follower of haqq. So if someone comes and tells me, for example, that there is one who asks Husain alayhi salam, give me bayat or give me your head. That's what he says. I know as a fact, Husain is the one who represents haqq and Yazid is the one who represents batil and dhulm. I can see it. Because I know Husain, I understand Husain, I know what he looks like, so I know his opposite as well. And once I know haqq, I then see clearly where is darkness, where is dhulm. I'll give you another example. Today, we are the followers of Ali who say Ali is khalifatahu bila fasl. Right? There is no gap between Rasulullah and Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Immediately, we have the end of the Rasul Mabad and we have Imam alayhi salam's waladat. Immediately, he is the Imam after. I know his haqq. His haqq is to be my Imam. I know this as a fact. I know he's my Khalifa. No one taught me this. I see it zahiran. I saw Ghadir, I saw Mubahila, I saw Khaybar and Khandaq and Badr and Hunayn. Of course Ali's my Mawla. It's obvious for me. So when someone else comes and says, follow someone instead of Ali, I say, how can I follow them when they are batin and Ali is haqq? I've seen haqq. I know haqq. How can I give him any number except one? He has the haqq of one. No one else has the right to take this maqam away from him. I've grown up saying that Allah is haqq, His Prophet is haqq, His Imam is haqq. How can I follow dhulm then? Let's go one step deeper. One of the opposites of haqq is not just dhulm, it's dhulam. Dhulam means darkness, meaning haqq is light, dhulam is darkness, meaning my imams are the imams of nur. Anyone who fights them is darkness. How can I follow anyone else when Husain is the nur of my life? Ya Ali. The Quran calls them Imam al-Nur. They call this the Imams of light. And by contrast, the Quran says there are some people who are imam al-nar, the imams who take you towards hellfire. It's easy for me to see who's imam al-nur or imam al-nar. I can see it clearly. The one who has eyes can see the one who's aynullah on this earth. This is enough for me to know that haqq, true haqq, is just recognition. Who is on haqq, who's on batil. I'm saying, Malik, your role is just to follow haqq. Follow the truth. Don't follow misguidance. Don't follow them. Don't follow your desires. Just follow that which is true. And which is true is what Allah has commanded you to do. Read Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And he ends by saying on this section, Ya Malik, if you don't follow haqq, if that's not a priority for you, if you don't follow it, you'll find that you are making yourself min harb ila Allah, at war with God. And when you're at war with Allah, your du'as will not be answered anymore. If you're acting against God, you'll find, and His punishment will always reach you. It'll reach you very quickly. Allah will be waiting for you. And then he says later, وَلَيْسَ شَيْءٌ عَدْعَى إِلَى تَغْيِيرِ نِعْمَةِ اللَّهِ وَتَعْجِيلِ نِقْمَةِ مِنَ الْإِقَامَةِ عَلَى الظُّلُمِ. There is no thing which will reverse Allah's bounty or make His punishment come quicker to you than when you do dhulm. Why? فَإِنَّ اللَّهُ سَمِيعُ دَعْوَةَ الْمُظْلَمِينَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla always hears the cry of the madhlum. He hears this cry. وَهُوَ لِلظَّالِمِينَ بِالْمِرْصَادِ. And He's always on the lookout. Who is doing dhulm? Allah is always aware of them. Think Malik, when you're in power now, if you even stray into dhulm, Allahu mirsad, Allah will watch you. He'll be seeing you. But if you're close to the madhlumeen, when they speak, Allah listens. So always be close to those people whose rights are being taken away. In the Quran, there are many occasions where the Holy Prophet does something which is proof of adl. And because he does it, we have an injunction for us. That verse I mentioned earlier, Surah 5, verse 8, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, A'dilu, be just, do adl, huwa aqrabu lit-taqwa. It's much closer for you to have taqwa if you do adl. You're not going to get God consciousness, that khushu in your salah when you feel that presence in your heart, those tears in your dua. You're not going to get any of that taqwa unless you do adl. Oh, do justice. Apparently, one narration says the reason for this verse was when the Holy Prophet learned about some plots to kill him from Banu Qurayza and Banu Salim. He heard this. When he heard this, he was thinking of what to do in response to them. Then the verse was revealed, or around about that time, do justice. Whatever you do, do justice. Okay. In another time, the Holy Prophet sends Khalid ibn Walid to one of the Qawm to guide them. However, Khalid murders one of the people there. When he murders him, the narration says that Rasulullah then says, I loathe this action. He then sends Imam Ali alayhi salam to go and rectify the problem which has been done and to pay the blood money for the one who was killed. Linked to the event comes the next verse of Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَانٌ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ إِلَّا تَعْدِلُوا. Don't, the verse says, lead the people towards any ill will or any suffering, because it will not be good for them or not be fair for them. Meaning in your actions, nothing you do should lead them towards dhulm. So not only I have to act out of dhulm, I can't lead someone towards dhulm either. I'm responsible for my words as well. Alaykum anfusakum. So when I speak now, I can't be the cause of someone else's misguidance. That's how deep it gets. Another verse of the Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Now the Prophet saying this, Amantu bima anzalallahu min kitabihi. I promise to believe everything which has been revealed by Allah in His book. وَأَمِرْتُ لِعَدْلٍ بَيْنَكُمْ. And I will judge between all of you with justice, with adl. The Prophet says this, I promise, I will only act according to what's come to me. مَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. I don't speak of my own desire. And I'll make sure when you come to me with a hukum, with a judgment, I will only act among you وَأَمْرَتُ لِلْعَدْلِ بَيْنَكُمْ, with adl, with justice. That's my measure. Whatever ishkal comes towards you, whatever issue comes towards me, the Prophet saying, I will only answer you with adl. The story linked to this verse is the following. At the Battle of Hunain, the Prophet is distributing the war booty among the people. One person says, Ya Rasulullah, you're not being fair in your distribution of the war booty. The Prophet becomes upset. He says, what do you mean I'm not being fair? If I'm not going to be fair, then who else is expected to be fair? Who else should have adl if not me? I've been commanded by God to have justice. This then leads to me and you, because the verse later on says, وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ. Now it's about you. When you judge, when you're choosing something, بَيْنَ النَّاسِ, among the people, إِنَّا تَحْكُمْ بِالْعَدْلِ. Only speak with justice. You have 3 verses saying the Prophet spoke with justice. Prophet acted with justice. Prophet lived by justice. He was responsible for others' justice. So now when you are giving judgment and someone asks for your opinion, you need to make sure you yourself are following that same adl. And whenever someone asks you for your opinion, I can't go beyond what Malik has been told. Insaf Allah wa insaf an-nas. Do right by God and right by the people. That's upon me and that's on my neck. This is a reminder for all of us, inshallah, that when someone comes to us for advice or asks us for any information, the injunction on me is to be fair and just be honest. What are their rights? What's truth? If they don't like it, the Quran says, I'm not responsible for that. I'm responsible for the truth and making sure I say it. Inshallah, we can all follow this. Read Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. كن أحب الأمور عليك أوسطها في الحق. The thing which should be most liked by you is to be with haqq. وَأَعْمُهَا فِي الْعَدْلِ. And to do the adl for everyone's rights. وَاجْمَعُهَا لِلرَّضَاءِ الرَّعِيَّةِ. And to make sure that your people are happy with you. Yani happy with the adl which you're doing. This should be your priority, Malik. When you're ruling now, number 1, be close to adl. Number 2, the ra'iyya, the people, your subjects. They must be happy with you. They can't be dissatisfied with you. Imam then says, even if the people have a problem with what you're saying, but the people who are elite, ahlul akhassa, like what you're saying, work on the people, don't prioritize the elitists. Then he says, and if the elitists are unhappy with something, those who are wealthy and rich, but the people among you have a problem, I prefer you to do justice by the people and not appease those who are rich and wealthy. Then he says, Malik, the one who causes the most issue to the one in power, the most loathsome one to the one in power, is the one who's ahlul akhassa, the one who's rich, the one who's wealthy, the chief. Why? They are the ones, he says, when life is easy, they are not helpful to you. When you are fair, they will complain to you. When they want a favor from you, they'll expect it from you. When you give them something, they'll expect more. They won't even be thankful of what they give to you. When you refuse something, they won't understand your refusal. They are, among these people, the weakest when life gets tough. However, إِنَّمَا عَمُودُ الدِّينِ. The people are the ones who establish the religion. The people, the common man, the normal person. They're your priority. Keep your eyes fixed on them. So when you rule now, adl is not just for a certain group. I can't treat them especially. I have to treat all of the people according to insaf. All of those who are considered among minan nas. And among the people, some of them, they will want you to lean towards one group more than the other. I'm summarizing a few lines in a few words. Don't lean towards them. Lean towards the truth. Some people will come to you, Ya Malik, and they will backbite about other people. They'll say what they're doing and what they're doing. Okay, more than this, you are going to notice the shortcomings of the people. You'll see what's wrong with them, what their problems are. You're going to see this. Malik, I don't want you to expose the problems of others. If you know something which is a shortcoming in the people, don't tell them. Keep it quiet. And if someone comes to you complaining about someone else, have adl, but don't expose that person publicly. This is for me and you. If I hear something about someone, I don't go around exposing them and telling everyone, do you know this about this person? Ya Allah, I heard this, I saw them. That's not how we're supposed to be. Then he says, Malik, your role when you have these problems is to take every knot of hatred of the people and untie those knots. Stop fitna and disunity among people. Make them one. Cut yourself away from anyone who is the cause of problems, of fitna. So don't go near them anymore. If someone's causing fasad, don't go near them. You don't have a right to go near them. If something happens where you're not sure, say you don't know. Be humble in that way. Don't hasten towards the one who backbites towards you. Because why? If they're backbiting to you right now, they could be backbiting about you to others. Be humble. Later on in the Nahj al-Balagha, Imam Islam says, take humility and place it as a watchtower between you and your enemy. Be humble. Don't be proud. Don't follow the backbiter. And don't follow the praise of the elitist. Follow the justice of the people. Now this vision I've described for you, and I've come to the end of this section of Nahj al-Balagha, and that's the end of that part. This idea is not how life is today. Life today is not like this. There's no system in the West, for example, where we are actually following this way of adl, where you treat everyone according to his own maqamat. We don't have this. One of the reasons why is because the nizam which we are in, the system which we are in, is oppressive. It's inherently oppressive. It's not one politician or one bad policeman or one famous leader or one blogger. It's not about one person. The whole system is built on dhulm. One of the reasons why is because in the history of development of society in the West, there have been certain phases which were pure dhulm. For example, the era of colonialism. This time period when one small corner of the world, the United Kingdom or the Great British Isles at the time, France, Belgium to some degree, Spain, these few countries had in them the takabbur to try and govern 1/3 of the world. Why is the hukumat relevant to India and Iran and Iraq and Pakistan and Afghanistan? Why? They have no right to run these worlds. But for centuries they did. And they ran these countries. And because they ran those countries with dhulm, our system today is built on that same dhulm. Let me give you a few examples. When the British went to India, they noticed something. One of the ambassadors writes back and says, I've come to India. Read this report. He says, the land is built of different faiths, Hindus and Muslims. Among the Muslims, we can control them easily, among those who are Sunni. But amongst a sect called the Shia, they gather together for something called the Majlis of Hussein. Because of this Majlis, we can't misguide them the way we want to. We can't control them. They have this Majlis. It's going to be much harder to deal with them. How do they deal with them? The first approach they had was to kill us. The first approach. For example, in 1857, we saw one of the most bloody days and massacres in the era of colonialism in Delhi. On that day, the British landed in Delhi. They went through the land and looked for all of the ulama and shu'ara, the poets and the scholars, and they gathered them together. They went to the river of Yamuna, and they lined up the ulama against the river, and with their cannons fired against them and killed them. What was their approach? Let's just kill them. Let's deal with the issue like this. Any alim, and we have actually famous shu'ara of Ahlul Bayt who were killed in this time in 1857. Let's just kill them. Easy tactic. Done. Obviously, it didn't work because we carried on to live. Next tactic. Okay, we can't kill them. Let's buy them. Let's buy them out. We have money and wealth. They don't. So, for one example, one of the British ambassadors in India went to our scholar, Syed Abdul Hassan Isfahani. And he went to him and said to him in Iran, I think this was, that we are the British, we've come to this land, we would like to give you a gift of 2 million tuman. Take it. Now, as you know, if someone brings you that kind of money, they're trying to buy your loyalty. Allama said, fine, thank you, he accepted it. He took the money. So later on, the ulama were like, yo, what are you doing? They're going to control us. They're trying to buy your fatwas from you, just like they've done with other ulama. The next day, Ayatollah Isfahani calls back the ambassador and says, thank you for this gift. Now listen, this war which you have done, I know that while your British are killing many people, there are many poor people back in England. I want to give you a gift to help those people. Here, take 4 million tuman from me, of which 2 million was the same money he gave him the other day. When the ambassador left, he realized something. I came with the intention to buy this scholar. In leaving, he has bought all of the British with his money. So this tactic didn't work. Okay, this didn't work. We can't buy the ulama. The ulama have too much integrity. Okay, let's buy the economy. So in Iran, when the British landed there, the Qajr, Abdul Hadi al-Qajr, the leader then, sold the tobacco industry to the British. And they gained a monopoly over all of the other businesses. So now, the British, set the prices for all of the tobacco. And in Iran, at the time and maybe even now, it was very famous and popular to smoke. Even in the masjid, they would smoke. It was very normal. But now what's happened? The prices have gone up. People can't afford to smoke anymore. And because of this, the British are controlling people by their money. They go to Agha Shirazi, Mirza Shirazi, one of the great scholars, Marajah there. He says, I'm going to give a fatwa right now that it's haram for every single follower of the Shia faith to buy tobacco anymore. If you do, he says, it's as if you are buying it in contrary to the will of your Imam al-Qaim. You're going to war with your Imam. When he says this, all of the Shia stop buying tobacco. This fatwa in 1891, the tobacco fatwa, a very famous fatwa, it stops. The British start losing money. Even in the house of the Shah, of the royal family, the servants stop preparing tobacco for them. They said, we're not allowed to prepare it for you. We can't do it anymore. From this way, they destroy it. And in that way, the British realized we can't buy them anymore. Their fatwas are too strong. Isn't the tactic? They said, okay, let's do divide and conquer. Divide and conquer is the famous strategy of the British wherever they go. Number one, and I heard this recently from a dear friend of mine, the census, which we sign or we give our allegiance to, not allegiance, we say what we are every year, every few years. This is a colonial concept. They went to India and they asked all the Muslims, are you Sunni or Shia? Back then, in a majlis, there'd be Sunni Shia together. It was quite normal. By doing the census, they realized who is Sunni, who is Shia. And they were able to divide the people based on racial and tribal lines and divide and split the Muslims. Before then, a Sunni and Shia were known to fight alongside each other against the colonialists. But now, they've been split. They're not together anymore, so they stopped. One thing they used to split the people was Majlis of Husaini alayhi salam. For example, the British at some point banned Majlis. No more Majlis anymore. It was banned. When it was banned, the Shi'i, of course, naturally we have nothing in our hearts except to do Majlis. But they didn't know how to re-establish majalis in a way that would be allowed at the time. So in the outskirts, in the lands, in the borders of the sea, on the coastal towns, they started doing dars of Quran. One of our scholars narrates this. Just Quran. That's not majlis. Gradually the crowds came together to listen to Quran. As they're doing Quran, they'd add a little bit of dars, a bit of tafsir. What does the verse mean? Okay, verse means this. Now, as you know, there's no verse of Quran where you can't see dhikr of my Mawla Abu Abdullah or Ali ibn Abi Talib. You can't see it. So gradually, in the durus, they'd start mentioning dhikr of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Soon that dhikr became masaib. Soon that masaib became majlis. And from just doing dars of Quran, whole Iman Barghas were reformed again, with strength of Sunni and Shia. So now the British couldn't stop this anymore. So they changed tactic and they're doing it today. They're still trying to do divide and conquer. How? By this idea of splitting Sunni and Shia, making us fight, making us kill each other. What does Imam Khomeini say? While we're fighting over whether or not we should pray with our hands out or folded, the enemy is trying to cut our hands. That's why it takes a great scholar like Syed Sistani to say to us, don't consider a Sunni just your brother. They are part of you. Anfusana, they're part of yourselves. Every statement like this is a slap in the face of the colonizers today. And they're doing the same thing in the UK, in America, in Canada, to split us using the majalis of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. This is dhulm. Imam Ali says, Ya Malik, your role is haqq, insaf, qist. Find it from God, live it, breathe justice. And when the time comes with the people, you'll know how to administer justice among the people. You know how to be just because you've learned it from God. This is how we should be. Always looking in every situation. If there's a justice for the plants and a justice for the dandelions, there should be justice for how I speak to my mother and father or how I treat this person in the street. There must be justice. I've got to find it. And everywhere that I find it, it's wajib on me to act on this justice. Okay. This is Imam Ali's definition of justice. What is it? Treat everything according to its proper place as ordained by Allah Azza wa Jalla, inshallah. In tomorrow's discussion, we'll keep reading on the letter about what is the ideal society of the Imam. Imam alayhi salam tells Malik that your society, your qawm in Egypt, must have in it 7 groups of people. And each of those 7 must be treated according to their rights. Those 7 exist today as well. What are those groups? What are their rights? How do I fit into one of those 7? Inshallah, we'll see that tomorrow with your permission. We'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let us now, in the days of Arba'een, turn our minds and hearts back to Karbala and Asirani Karbala. The days of Arba'een, coming closer and closer to 40 days until this tragedy happened. 40 days from the day when the blood of Hussein was spilt on the land of Karbala. Each day, each breath is closer and closer to Arba'een. During the life of Sajjad alayhi salam, even after Karbala, every day for him is a reminder of Ashura. He lives with this grief everywhere he goes. In Medina, when he goes home, when he sees children, he thinks of those children whose rida and jadar was taken. When he sees animals, he thinks of how they were slaughtered with raham, whereas Abu Abdullah was slaughtered with no raham. Everywhere he looks, he sees it. One day, a person says to him, Ya Imam, I'm getting married. Please come and welcome our gathering with your presence. Imam says, since Ashura, I don't go to places like this anymore. I don't have this in me. He says, please, Ya Imam, come. Imam says, fine, I'll come to your wedding with one condition. You must recite the musibah of my brother Ali al-Akbar. Only if you read this masayib, I will come myself. He says, fine, Imam, I'll read it. That day, Imam alayhi salam goes and he sits down and he sits and gathers. Before the wedding starts, they start reading the musibah of that Mazloom Ali al-Akbar. As they read, Imam starts crying and he stands up. They say, Imam, why are you standing? He says, previously you were reciting your wedding, I was your guest. When you mentioned my brother Ali Akbar, you are now my guest. This is now my gathering for my family. Imam alayhi salam stands up and later on he's sitting outside by the shoes outside the wedding. Someone says, Ya Imam, we called you for a wedding, we called you for a marriage, why have you left? He says, you don't see something. You look at me thinking I'm alone crying outside. Do you know something? Every time someone mentions the musibah of Ali Akbar, my grandmother Zahra comes. You can't see, she's sitting with me crying for Ali Akbar. So now come to Sham. When this Imam goes to Yazid and they say, this is Ali ibn al-Hussein. Yazid says, didn't I kill Ali ibn al-Hussein? Imam Sajjad says, that was my brother Ali Akbar who you killed on the day of Ashura. I am Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. For some reason, many years later, even in that wedding, Imam can't let go of the dhulm to Ali Akbar. Why? Maybe it's that moment when Ali Akbar is standing outside the camp waiting to go and fight. On one side, Layla holds one arm, Kulthum holds the other arm, Ruqayya holds their legs. All of them are crying and mourning, saying, how can you go to the Maqtal? You are the face of Rasulullah. Many, in this one moment, the Rawi says it was like Qiyamah, Ali Akbar going to the Maqtal. We've never seen this before. Of all the women who hugged and held him close, I think there was no one who held him the way Zainab held Ali Akbar before he left. Why? Because when Ali Akbar says, Ya Abu Abdullah, oh my father Hussein, let me fight. He says, don't ask me for ijazah. Ask Zainab, she raised you. Only if she lets you go can you go and fight. So which moment does Imam Sajjad want to hear the musibah? Was it this moment? Or was it the moment when Imam Ali Akbar alayhi salam is on the horse riding towards the battlefield? The one who looks like Rasulullah. While he's riding, he turns and sees Hussein is following the horse towards the Maqtal. Ali Akbar says, Ya Abu Abdullah, I already have ijazah to go. Why are you following me? What does Hussein say? Hussein says, no father has had a son like Ali Akbar. Ali Akbar, you're not father, you don't understand something. And no father has watched a son leave like I'm watching you leave. There is no youth like you, Ali Akbar. He says, leave me father, let me go. Which thought is in Imam Sajjad's mind years later in Medina that he says, read this musibah? Was it the way Ali Akbar fought? Was it how brave he was? Or was it how thirsty he was that he comes back to his mother to have water one more time, but there's no water for him? Which time was it? Maybe it was the time when Ali Akbar is fighting and the enemy say, we cannot kill him. This is the son of Hussein, there's no way. So one enemy raises a spear, turns it back and throws the spear at the chest of Ali Akbar. As the spear comes in his chest, he falls and says, Assalamu alayka ya Abu Abdullah. Maybe this moment, when he falls, Hussein runs to Ali Akbar. The riwayat says Hussein doesn't run to him. He says, Aina Ali Akbar, where are you? Why? I can't see anymore. Just hearing your voice fall to the ground has blinded your father, Hussein. Ali Akbar is lying on the ground. He's not lying on his back or his front. Why? The spear has gone through his chest. So he's lying on his side. As Hussein comes, he stops and weeps, kneels on his knees and says, you have called me, but I am too late to come to you, Ali Akbar. When he says this, Ali Akbar says, my father, I am so thirsty. I wish I could drink water. When he says, Hussein says, soon my mother Zahra will give you water. My father Ali will give you water. Ali Akbar says, but Hussein, my father, who will give you water? You are thirsty as well. Which moment was it? Maybe it's when Husayn alayhi salam takes the spear from the chest of this young boy and starts weeping and crying, because as the chest comes out, Ali Akbar's jigar is torn to pieces. When it comes out, Husayn starts weeping, saying, Ibrahim, bear witness, what I am doing today, even you didn't do for Ismail. Now come to Shamis Arbain. When they're walking to the Darbar towards Yazid alayhimullah, many of the women see among all of the heads, there's one head which is so beautiful. Many of the servants of the women say, who is this Jawan? We've never seen any boy, any youth more beautiful than this. When they say, why are you asking? They says, we wonder. We've never seen a youth so beautiful whose head's on a spear. Was the mother alive when this young boy was killed? When they says this, Layla turns and says, I am the mother of this Ali Akbar. Not only I was alive, I watched his body being brought back by Husayn. Sometimes Husayn falls, sometimes he stands. He couldn't stay still. Why? The grief of Ali Akbar had already killed Husayn alayhi salam. Inna lillahi wa inna alayhi raji'un, ridwan wa qadahi wa tasliman bi amrih. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. For the sake of Ali and Akbar, all our youth, guide them and keep them on the path of Ahlul Bayt. Ya Allah, any youth, any young person or old who died defending the haram of Sayyidah Zainab sallallahu alayha, allow us to follow their footsteps in shahadat. Ya Allah. Ya Allah, these tears, this majalis, forgive all of our sins for this sake. Ya Allah. Ya Allah, the Zawar of Husayn alayhi salam who are walking now, let their walking be easy and kind to them, Ya Allah. And Ya Allah, for the sake of this majlis, make me worthy of following the banner of Adl of my Imam al-Qaim al-Hujjah wa Zaman, inshaAllah, Ya Allah. Allahumma inni as'aluka bihaqqi Fatimata wa abiha wa ba'aliha baniha wa sirr musta'awdu fiha an tusalli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain. उस वक्त जब के ज़ैनब दरबार में गई थी, कारी नमाजियों से महफिल सजी हुई थी। ज़ालिम ये पूछता था, गाज़ी तेरा कहाँ है? अरे बालों से मुँह छुपाए ज़ैनब कह रही थी। सारे मिलके पढ़े। ऐ मेरे बाबा जा हो रही है अज़ा, सर छुपाऊं कहाँ? ऐ मेरे बाबा जा हो रही है अज़ा, सर छुपाऊं कहाँ? ऐ मेरे बाबा जा है अज़ा। मजमा-ए आम में बेवतन बेहमा آ گیا کارواں اے میرے بابا جان ہو رہی ہے اذان سر چھپاؤں کہاں اے میرے بابا میں بھی ہوں مرضیہ بنت خیر النساء میرے لہجے میں ہے بابا تیری عطا نام زینب میرا تو نے جو رکھ دیا دے دی اپنی زبان اے میرے بابا جان ہو رہی ہے اذان سر چھپاؤں کہاں اے میرے بابا جان میں ردا مانگتی رہ گئی بام در سج گئے جیتی جی مر گئی حلقہ شام میں نام سن کر میرا مر گیا ناتوا اے میرے بابا جان ہو رہی ہے اذان سر چھپاؤں کہاں اے میرے ہاتھ کانوں پہ ہے نیل گالوں پہ ہے اور نشان جو سکینہ کے شانوں پہ ہے ہر نشان سے یہی آ رہی ہے صدا بابا جان اے میرے بابا جان ہو رہی ہے اذان سر چھپاؤں کہاں اے میرے بابا جان یہ تیرا آخری تھا بیان تیری چادر بچا ایک غازی جوان مر گیا باوفا چھن گئی ہے ردا کہتی ہیں بیبیاں اے میرے بابا جان ہو رہی ہے اذان سر چھپاؤں کہاں اے میرے بابا جان رک نہ پایا میرے باوفا کا وہ سر نوکنے سے آنے لگا خاک پر بہن کو در بدر دیکھ کر ننگے سر سہ نہ پایا جوان اے میرے بابا جان ہو رہی ہے اذان سر چھپاؤں کہاں اے میرے بابا جان یہ ہے اذان سر چھپ یا حسین یا حسین
یا حسین یا حسین جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا لے، ماشاءاللہ بلند آواز سے، جانے والے کربلا کے ماشاءاللہ مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، روضہ شبیر پر دوں گا دعا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، جانے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے، ہے جہاں گنجے شہیداں، ہے جہاں نہر فرات، ہے جہاں گنجے شہیداں، ہے جہاں نہر فرات، جس جگہ سید میرا پیاسا رہا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، جانے ماشاءاللہ ہے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل جے، جس جگہ عباس کے بازو قلم ہو کر گرے، جس جگہ عباس کے بازو قلم ہو کر گرے، اس جگہ میں بھی کروں ماتم ذرا لے چل مجھے، اس جگہ میں بھی کروں ماتم ذرا لے چل مجھے، جانے والے کربلا کے کربلا لے چل مجھے، جانے جو بھی آتا ہے علم پر میں، جو بھی آتا ہے علم پر میں دعا دیتی ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ، میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ، مل کے میں سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ، میں بالی سکینہ، جو بھی آتا ہے علم پر میں، جو بھی آتا ہے علم پر میں دعا دیتی ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ، میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ، بلند آواز سے، میں ماشاءاللہ ہے، میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی، نام ہے بالی سکینہ ہے سخی میرے چچا، لا دوا مانگنے آتا ہے اگر کوئی شفا، اس کو عباس کے پرچم کی، اس کو عباس کے پرچم کی ہوا دیتی ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ، میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، سکینہ ہے میں بالی سکینہ ہوں میں. ماشاءاللہ جیئیں. مانگنے آتا ہے گر کوئی علم پر بیٹے، اپنے اموں کے وسیلے سے خدا سے کہہ کے، اس کو صدقہ علی اصغر کا، اس کو صدقہ علی اصغر کا دلا دیتی ہوں. میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ ہے میں بالی سکینہ، سکینہ میں بالی. لوگ دیتے ہیں خدا کو جو وسیلہ میرا، کرتے ہیں بیٹیوں بہنوں کے نصیبوں کی دعا، کہہ کے آمین نصیبوں کو، کہہ کے آمین نصیبوں کو جگا دیتی ہوں. میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ، میں بالی سکینہ، سکینہ میں بالی سکینہ. میرے بابا کا عزادار ہے یہ ذل رضا، ذاکر بی بی سکینہ ہے یہ فرحان میرا. تم کو ہر بار میں روزے پہ، تم کو ہر بار میں روزے پہ بلا لیتی ہوں. میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ، میں بالی سکینہ ہوں، میں بالی سکینہ میں. یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین.
بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. سورۃ المبارکۃ الفاتحہ.
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین، السلام علیک یا فاطمۃ الزہرا سیدتی نساء العالمین، السلام علیک یا خدیجۃ الکبریٰ، السلام علیک یا حسن المجتبیٰ، السلام علیک یا ابا عبداللہ الحسین وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن أجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وظهوره. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
صلواتك عليه وعلى كل ساعة اليوم واحدة واحدة وناصعة ودليل